Welcome to my new Bible study series, The Colorful Bible. I am Reverend John David Duke Jr. of Concordia Lutheran Church in Newfane, New York, and also I'm the pastor of St. John Lutheran Church in Youngstown, New York, beautiful Niagara County. I'm also the Old Testament professor adjunct at Concordia Lutheran Theological Seminary in St. Catharines, Ontario. I've been so since 2004. And I thought it'd be good in this time where we're kind of apart from each other to just take a step back and do something delightful. And that is to take a look at the colors of the Bible. And I don't mean red, white, and blue, or just red and white, but just how colorful the Bible is in the pictures it gives. So you take a look behind me. This is a Byzantine mosaic. Look how much color there is. And of course, the center of this picture is a Bible and a guy carrying a cross. I don't know what this is. I just picked it up off the internet, and here it is. It's part of a larger piece of art made in mosaics. It's colorful, very colorful. The problem with the Bible, as if there should be any problem with it, but the problem with us and the Bible is that it's written in ink on a page. And even if you consider like a digital version of the Bible on a screen, it's still ink on a page by all reckoning, right? So I thought we would just take some time and look at these pictures and not so much for meaning. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So, for example, I thought, well, what about actually drawing a picture of the temple? The temple's a big deal in the Bible, but it's such a object thing, sitting still, doing nothing, and it's almost in our minds this kind of wet clay lump that is sort of like, well, there's this temple thing, and maybe there's some pillars and such, and I guess some smoke in it. Maybe you gotten that far? But how's it decorated? What do the decorations signify? Why do we have a temple, right? And why does Jesus make a big deal of the temple? So it reminds me, for example, I went to see Roger Waters when he came to town, I don't know, was it 6, 7 years ago? And he brought his presentation of The Wall, which, if you're not familiar with Pink Floyd, The Wall, it's it's an album, a record album produced in the late 70s, early 80s that was kind of about how we have walls between us and our loved ones. And in particular, the context of the thing is a rock star trying to bring forward his fears and anxieties and share them with his fearful and anxious audience, but they don't care. And so he builds a wall, and it's knocked down. And in the course of the presentation, say an hour or so in, you get the sense that everything is kind of gray and it's getting dark. Even though there's music and lights, it's all gray. Everything's gray. This big wall on the stage is gray and graying. And then all of a sudden, there comes a point in the concert, the presentation, this play. It's kind of an operatic rock opera kind of thing. Roger Waters turns around and hits the wall, and this monstrous wall, 80 feet by 100 feet, just huge, bursts into bright colors that are alive with movement, butterflies, rainbows, and the such. And it is, especially after that long in a closed space with rock fans, it is an astounding effect. And I think that's kind of the way the Bible works. It looks one way when we're reading it, and it comes alive when we work on it. And I thought we would work on it. And when I mean work on it, let's just take one of our favorite stories from being children, Joseph and his coat of many colors. Well, let's draw a coat of many colors. And I have a new little thing here. Well, it's actually old, and I finally resurrected. I got a little tablet I can draw with, so I can do a little better. And there's a coat. Oh, it's red. Okay. And there's one side of the coat, and here's kind of another side of the coat, and there's an arm. Whoa, I don't like that arm. Let's get rid of that. Another side of the coat kind of starting here, like I said. Yeah, see, and you can play and have fun. There's the other arm. And let's not give it a collar this time. Let's just make it a coat that's held together with rope of some sort. And then we'll draw in some lines. We want to be kind of silly about our lines maybe and draw the coat. And see, we're actually drawing the colors of the coat, right? And it's coming alive like a picture book, except we're doing the work of drawing this coat. And what does it signify that you have a coat made of many colors? Well, I guess you could say that Joseph is a salesman. Trying to stand out on a crowd, like in, what's the name of that? I just have the song 101 Trombones right behind, where he sells the town on something they don't need, and it gets picked up by the Simpsons, and he sells them the monorail. This very colorful figure, right? And it's an expensive coat, and we know that his brothers are jealous of it. There's the coat. Let's put Joseph in it. Let's see if we can figure out a way to put Joseph in it. So I'm going to draw with smaller lines. Let's see if I can do this. Round head, sort of round. Looks like he got beat up already. Let's try a round head again. There we go. Nice. Oh yes. No, you've got something there. He fits in. Oh, it's oversized coat. It's because he wants to grow into it, right? And some feet there. So duck feet. We're drawing fast today in here. And we're talking about the story as we're going along, and that's key to what I'm trying to get across to you, right? Let's give him some brown eyes here. And a nice smile. Oh, we'll give him red lips because he's a little kid, right? There we go. And a little nose. And some long hair because, I'll make it kind of darkish. Yeah. Because, his dad really likes him, right? So he gets to have his hair along instead of cutting short like a dad who doesn't really like his kids, I'm just kidding, of course, right? So there is Joseph in his coat of many colors, and it's a colorful thing. It's a colorful story, and we'll take a look at the colors of it all as we go forward, right? And having fun with these things. And again, not too much meaning, but really what they how they affect us. Like, like I just did this whole spiel. Like, well, how does that affect you? When you see that thing, if you're one of the brothers, you're jealous. How come I don't have something so nice? Well, this is Rachel's firstborn, and then we're into meaning without having to go, well, what does this mean? Right? Because we all know spoiled kids. Oh, not spoiled. Favored. So a little more. That's Joseph and his coat of many colors. Isaiah 6 and his seraphim. They're beings on fire. He's surrounded by fire. That's a pretty colorful picture. And we ought to take a look at it and see if we can't draw it with some sort of effect. Ezekiel 8 and the cherubim. Ezekiel looks into heaven and sees the same thing, and he draws a completely different picture for us. And so we have two pictures of one thing that don't resemble each other at all. Well, maybe there's some similarities that we're not seeing, right? That's enough visions. Visions are kind of abstract, even though we try to concretize them. What about Elijah? Oh, Elijah shows up, makes drought. That's pretty... You could say a colorful picture, maybe not a particularly happy picture, but it's pretty colorful. Droughts are colorful things. There's a lot going on in a drought. The ravens that come by, right? He raises the dead son with a second to the widow who gives him all the food. The oil and the bread don't run out, and the flour don't run out. Yeah, and then the son dies, and he raises him from the dead. And then there's this battle between Elijah and Jezebel. Yeah, Jezebel. Big deal. And the fire from heaven that maybe he shouldn't have called down. And he goes over and tries to talk to God and get some sense into God's mind. And God's having none of it, and you see the picture again, the colorful picture of the rocks shattering, this earthquake, and this tempest, and the fire, and then this soft, still whisper. Go back and whisper. That's kind of the meaning, but I'm ahead of myself. No meaning, right? And then Elisha, again, God, and my interpretation of that fire is Elijah. You're no longer the big man. You're out. Go hire some other people. Anoint this guy and anoint that guy. And Elisha's one of them. And Elisha doubles up on Elijah. All right. One of my favorite prophets is Micaiah, sort of obscure. We're going to do some of these other stories that we don't know so well, but are really, really interesting if you just take a moment and look at them. And so we'll look at them. We got Job. Job has a lot of pictures. I mean, the whole thing in the beginning and the end with this thing, the attack of the whatever, and Satan is afflicting him with sores, but he can't kill him. And then in the middle, you have this argument going on. That's not so colorful, but God shows up in a whirlwind. That's a fun, colorful picture, and instructive and effective. It affects us, right? The Battle of Jericho, favorite story from when we're children. And when you're adults, you get to do the prostitute part of the story too. The fall of Jerusalem. That's pretty colorful because there's a lot of colors when you blow up a city. Rebuilding Jerusalem. There's an adventure there. It's not just cut and dried. You have to go in and you don't just hire a contractor. There's a guy actually shooting arrows at them while they're trying to rebuild this temple and this city. And God is really adamant. You're going to rebuild this, and I don't care how many people are shooting at you. Which is a test of faith and trust, and that's pretty colorful. Oh, and the very idea of returning to Jerusalem and rebuilding it, pardon me whilst I have a cup of coffee here, is the notion of a land flowing milk and honey. Just think about that. Let's draw that just in our minds. Maybe we'll talk about fig trees, dates, camels, all sorts of colorful things to talk about. Quiet waters, which is one of the fundamental pictures of the Christian experience. He leadeth me beside the still waters, which is Psalm 23. And that leads us into the Psalms and all the wonderful pictures there. The Lord is a mighty warrior. He has given me a shield and a sword, and he stood me up on my feet. And there's a whole bunch of pictures there. That's Psalm 18. Always popular among schoolboys. Balaam's talking ass. Maybe we can draw a talking ass, and we're talking about a donkey, not a politician. The crossing of the Red Sea. That's a pretty colorful picture, and we've seen it a million times drawn in children's books. Why don't we draw it ourselves? And not just necessarily in this paint thing, but draw a mind picture to bring it alive, right? The crossing of the Jordan, those two things go together, crossing the Red Sea and crossing the Jordan, because they become, for Christians, one of the main ways to understand death. And that's an important effect, right? The oft neglected, sadly over-neglected Acts of the Apostles. Oh my word, don't they have adventures beginning on the day of Pentecost until the very end, Acts chapter 28, when that viper crawls out of a fire and bites St. Paul. He's not St. Paul yet. Well, he is St. Paul yet. But he bites Paul while he's preaching to the people there on that island. And they watch for him to swell up and die, and he doesn't. What a picture to end the Acts of the Apostles. You'll notice I've skipped a few things, and like I said, I don't really want to do things that are obvious. What I want to do is bring alive the things that are sort of gray, right? We've seen them a million times, or maybe we haven't seen them, but they're lumpy and need shape. So when it comes to a colorful Bible, we have a lot of coloring to do. So, set yourself, get ready, bring a piece of paper and a pen. Oh, that reminds me. Why am I doing it like this? Oh, I see where I need to scoot my green screen over a little bit. That way. Everything's turned over on my monitor. Why are we doing it this way? First of all, I am not comfortable as a leader of people, and many of them are elderly, of just throwing open the doors and crowding in together in a room, especially as the winter approaches and the season cools off. I do not see us meeting together until after Christmas, until we're sure that this thing is good and dead, the virus, or that there's, when we talk about being safe enough, that we're talking about really, really, really close to perfectly safe. Okay? And we're not there yet. Numbers are steady, infections are still happening, and so on and so forth. And I want to know that we're doing safe. Second reason, we ought to use this opportunity to build up patterns at home, even if it's once a week, that at home you are doing Bible study. At home, at home, at home. I'm repeating. Get it through your noggins. The faith must be practiced at home. Prayers out loud at home. Time to read the Bible out loud, or discuss it and talk about it at home out loud. Confessing your creed out loud at home. Saying the Lord's Prayer, prayers again, out loud at home on a regular basis. I want you to stay at home and make a practice of doing a Bible study with me, with this miracle, this internet miracle. Those of you who are under my care as sheep in a flock of God, localized at St. John's and at Concordia, and any guests or visitors who are watching this and are kind of curious as to what I mean by colorful Bible and what I have to offer you and give you as part of my career vocation here. Do it at home. We have to practice the faith at home in order for the faith to survive. If we continue to practice the faith at church and feel like the church is the only place and the central place where faith is practiced, we're dead. And that's basically, I think, in the cards. We have been doing church on Sundays for a good couple of generations now, and our churches are emptying out because at home, there's no need for church. If you practice church at home, your faith at home, I mean, right? When I say church, I mean faith. And faith starts with the Word of God and the exercise thereof. When we start doing that, then we're going to have a renovation. I don't see how, and I'm going to put God to the test on this, I don't see how God would look at a people in a demographically, suspect place like Western New York, where, we're kind of reverting to a different era instead of the high time of manufacturing. I don't see how God could look at a people who are in this demographically suspect place where we might not survive, right? And just say, you know what, they're studying the Bible at home, and they're bringing their faith to church on Sundays, and they're taking their faith home and doing it at church during the day and the week. And there's this pastor who's supplying them with all the things they need in order to know that they're unified around the word of Christ. My son, I think I'm going to shut them down. I just don't see that. I don't see that at all. But I do see it this way. You know what? They're just not getting it. They go to church on Sundays, they say all the right words, they feel like they're doing Christian stuff, and then they don't do anything between Sundays. We have to do this, I think. I just feel like we have to, live our faith, right? We especially Lutherans have a real problem with this. When we talk about justification of faith apart from the works of the law, that doesn't mean there aren't works of the law. It means that if you do them, you have to do all of them for your salvation. But that doesn't mean you don't have to do good works. Love thy neighbor didn't get abrogated by Christ dying on the cross. It got amplified, right? And he does it himself. And we are in Christ. Lutheran, what do you call that? When you're reading the fine print, yes, I know, right? You can't rely on works, but you do good works as a Christian. It's very clear. If you're meditating on God's word at home, and I'm going to help you with these pictures. First of all, hopefully when you enliven them for yourself, you'll see yourself in them. your family in them, your neighbor in them, and God's grace and mercy in them. And the effect will be to serve one another. Right on. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind. He serves you with his Son, and you serve him with obedience to the gospel. Work that out. We shall see you Thursdays, generally speaking. If not, I will send a message that I didn't get it done. Until then, I pray that God will bless your study of his word at home, and I'll see you next time.